What is up, everybody? Steele's in the house. Firstly, thank you for all the gifted subs. Looking at you, Sean. It's very generous. And to all the other people that have subbed, we appreciate your support. But here we go. The October 3rd, we've got Steele joining us, and I feel like the timing's perfect. Josh, yesterday we just had Aston and Dicey announced part of the 100 Thieves. Um, how are you feeling about this announcement? I know that it's been taking you guys a while to figure out exactly who would be the best to fill out the roster. You got three super experienced guys, and I feel like this is a great place to start the discussion.
Yeah, it should be good. I think we had the best fit with them as soon as we played some just tryouts, basically. We were experimenting with a few different, like, I guess, duos of people, like, kind of packages. And when we played with them, it was like instantly, it just felt better. And then we also had better results in the games that we played, considering we had basically no prep. So finding two players that were that young, that were that mature, that were that skilled. Obviously, there's like still a long road to go in terms of, getting all the other things that you accumulate over years in terms of experience and dealing with all sorts of different situations, because that's all just reps. That's on us to kind of help them, get to that next point. But yeah, for now, we're in a pretty good spot with these two kids because they're showing that they're good enough to be able to, be with the high rollers or whatever.
Yeah, it's a really interesting thing because I know that, for example, in CS:GO, even though obviously CS has been around for a long time, it's a game that's all about fundamentals. It still helped to have the old veterans guiding in kind of the first generation CS:GO talent. Kind of took a while to get there, but once I think those players started to really come up and be relevant enough to get picked up into the bigger teams and to be guided by the vets, it seemed like this was like a very successful formula in a lot of cases. And it feels like you guys have an insane amount of experience on the team between yourself, Nitro, and Hiko. You will bring something pretty different. But one thing that I'm wondering about with this team in particular, and I know a lot of people will probably think this too, is you've got a lot of experience there. But do you think that you guys are going to work super well together? Obviously, when you have three people that have a view of the game that's very strong and a lot of experience to back it up with, it can sometimes be difficult to make sure that everybody's on the same page. How do you see that kind of leadership process and the kind of working togetherness? How will that pan out? Do you feel like with these players?
I think because the game is still so young and nobody's really figured it out yet, I think that there's just, as long as we leave an open floor to discussion and listen to each other's ideas and thoughts about how to approach certain situations, I don't think there's anyone that's like really figured it out yet. So even if, like, let's say I bring up an idea, I'm like, hey, on this map in this situation, I think we should do this, and here's reason why. And they say, no, like I disagree, and here's why I think it's just gonna work like that instead. Then we just say, okay, let's try it both ways and see how it goes. And then, maybe both of us end up being wrong, and it's like you do it a third way. But as long as you kind of have that healthy discussion and dialogue open, that you can just talk to one another and just talk about ideas and be open to them, and then try implementing it, see if we can even implement it to begin with. And then if it's possible to implement, we try it out in a practice game, because that's what practice games are for. I think that's how we're kind of getting to that next point right now. And I guess the first part of the question that you were asking is that, um, you know, three of us have a lot of experience in different point of views. I think that one thing that I learned from playing with Ghosts and Chaos is that I realized, kind of, it's kind of like that Dunning-Kruger thing where you're
Right.
you're you're just so used to playing against, like, with and against people that are, kind of at the top, so to speak. And then you remember that you have to be like, oh wait, like these guys haven't, like, been in this situation before this consistently, that this is like a new concept to them. And you're kind of going back to the basics yourself, but to them it's like it's advanced, so to speak. And I think the experiences that I learned on those teams means that I've kind of already got a lot of, like, the groundwork in terms of different, like, concepts and fundamentals already kind of typed out, and it's a matter of just going back and readdressing those, because those are some things that I had to do myself as I got back into the game after, the ban situation. And
Yeah.
because I was taken out of the meta for a long time, and the game progressed a lot. And when I got back, there were, things that I'm just like, whoa, you guys do it like this? That's sick. And I didn't know how to deal with it, so I had to develop ways to deal with it. And now I have those things. So, someone like Nitro that's been playing with, Elige, Twist, Naf, and then like, Stewie or Simple, Hiko, like other these players over the last like, 5 years, he's been playing with like the absolute best players in the region. He might not remember what it was like um, to not know these things.
Yeah.
So in that respect, I guess it's like kind of good that I kind of have these experiences with these younger players that I'm able to kind of realize that yeah, this is going to be hard and this isn't going to come like as natural. And it's a good thing I've got like a lot of these concepts and stuff written down because that helps us a lot, or it will, I think.
Yeah, I think it's going to be something that it's just so fascinating to see this combination of players again. Like you have all this experience in kind of growing talent and creating these rosters, and you had this kind of artificial ceiling because of the band that you mentioned before. So that's actually one thing I quickly wanted to address because when I did a podcast with you a while ago, I remember you said that even though you had this ban and you've had have had options to consider playing other games and trying to compete in them where you wouldn't be plagued by this artificial ceiling as it were, you felt like nothing really compared to CS for you, and so you just couldn't move away from CS. And so in you for me, after kind of doing that podcast with you and hearing you talk about CS like that, to see that you've made the switch to Valorant and clearly must find Valorant a game that's engaging enough and kind of ticks enough boxes for you, that's got to feel really like quite special because you now that kind of past you can kind of leave that behind. Truly, it feels like.
Yeah, so like when I tried playing Overwatch, for example, I kind of did it not because I really enjoyed the game. I did it because I didn't really have any other options that I wanted to compete, and it was like close enough. It was like the only FPS that was close enough to Counter-Strike, but it was still so super far. It's like more of a MOBA than it is, whatever Counter-Strike is. And because I never really got into it, and there were like so many different things, and it was so difficult to practice what I needed to practice. Like the team I played for, I was on DPS, and then I was on the projectile DPS. It's like, yeah, like I've practiced doing like Pharah rockets in Counter Strike. Like this doesn't happen. Like if anything, I should be first of all on one of the hit scan characters, and then secondly, like I kind of wanted to be more of a flex character, but I it was hard to get the practice on the characters I wanted to play, like in terms of just in Counter-Strike you have all these tools at your disposal. There's demos, there's deathmatch servers, there's you could shoot bots and like aim bots or other workshop maps, and it's easy to be like, I need to work on this, and then bing, you're in the server and you're able to fix it, whether it be smoke lineups, molly lineups, like test damage, test wall spams, any of these things. It didn't exist in Overwatch, and that made it like so difficult to learn, and my motivation was low that I never got into it, and it was just bad. So hopped out of that. Didn't really have any other like games I wanted to compete in. PUBG came around. I'm like, okay, this looks interesting. I really enjoy playing it, and I was going to, play on a team for that. But then ESIC came by, ESL and DreamHack unbanned us, and then I'm like, okay, well, forget about that. So when Valorant came out, I kept an eye on it. I'm like, okay, maybe keep an eye on it, but probably stay with CS, especially with like the trajectory that the team's going in. But then as I played more of it, especially during like the player break and seeing like the direction that Counter-Strike was going in, I actually feel like Valorant suits my playstyle a lot more than Counter-Strike does in terms of just like the rattiness that I do in game. Just like I don't take like straight up aim duels. I always like find a way to just be like a rat and just like you're distracted, I kill you there, or like I pop in and out of smokes or weird things like this. Like I don't take these straight up like 1v1 aim duels. You're gonna probably beat me at that, but it just feels better. So when I was like actually considering, what possibilities are there for Valorant, and also the fact that eventually down the line I'll probably be, replaced by my team in Counter Strike, and then what happens when I get replaced? I'm gonna rebuild again for the how manyth time? I'm like, I don't really want to do that. I'd rather just go and start fresh in Valorant where I don't have to have these artificial ceilings where it's like I'm gonna get to a point where it's like, okay, well, see you guys. It's been a good run. I'll you guys continue and I'll go and take a few steps back and teach some newer kids again. And like you could argue that aren't you kind of doing that right now with two new players in Dicey and Asuna? It's like, yeah, but we do this one time and we're good. It's not like they're gonna get to a point where they're gonna be good enough that they're gonna be like, all right, well, Steel, we want to go to the major, see ya. And I'm gonna be like, wait, like this? Ejected.
Yeah, it was always I think quite inspiring for a lot of people looking in on your situation to see that you were helping the scene out a lot in that sense. Like you're doing a service and developing the scene, but obviously, that's all good and everything for the scene, but what does it do for you ultimately? It's got to be difficult to keep the motivation up. And one thing, because I know that you can't necessarily go into details in terms of how the team itself is going to run in terms of what you'll be doing with all the players and the specifics behind the roles. But one thing I wanted to ask um, is how are you going to make it so this team doesn't necessarily run into some of the same pitfalls that, let's say, T1 did? Because T1 was also a team that went into this game with a very heavy CS background, and they clearly struggled in some respects. It seems due to this background.
I think the CS background helps a lot in terms of a lot of the fundamentals are the same. A lot of the concepts are the same. The way that you play a lot of situations are the same. But the problem with being a CS player and almost like an exclusive CS player is that once you learn the meta in CS and you only learn one meta, even players within CS don't keep up with the meta. So if you're coming to a new game and you're still stuck and you don't adapt your mindset to that new game, to the new characters, to new abilities, to the new maps, to the new guns, and you're like, oh, I use only Vandal or Phantom. I'm not even going to experiment with like the Odin or the Ares. I'm not going to experiment with like using the shotguns or the SMGs. I think if you come in with that mindset and you're so hard stuck in whatever ways that you are, you're not malleable, you're not able to just like flex your style, flex your approach to the game or anything like that, I think you're gonna have a bad time. And I think that I don't know if that's true for what happened with the T1 guys. Maybe they had a different issue. Maybe they had an issue with they didn't really have like a clear leadership, and because they didn't have clear leadership, they didn't know what they wanted to do, or maybe they would have eventually got somewhere, but they just didn't work at the pace that they needed to. I don't know the situation well enough, but I feel like a lot of CS players will fall into one of these issues where they're unable to adapt quick enough, or they're not able to adapt at all.
I think as well, like coming from CS, we were so used to for 6 months it was like Krieg and AUG meta, and you just kind of have to deal with it. Whereas this game, it could be every 2 weeks, and an agent drastically
Yeah.
changes like week in, week out.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty big thing actually too. It's that there will be what, two new maps and six new agents per year. That's a
Yeah.
lot of changes, constant changes. You're gonna have to keep up a lot. And I think like, for example, when we see agents coming and going, we see these tier lists. I see a tier list and I just don't agree with it at all. And people put like Cypher way up there and Killjoy so low down, and it's like, no, I think Killjoy's better. And people are like, what? Killjoy better? What are you talking about? Cypher, you need Cypher on your teams. And I don't know. Like, I guess I just have a different perspective, and maybe I'm wrong, maybe I'm right, maybe it doesn't matter. Maybe like they're good for their own reasons and within different play styles. But the fact that people will come at you and be like, you use that, you use this agent, you think that agent's better than this. This is your tier list. This is your like gun that you like to use. Why do you use the Odin? Why don't you use the Phantom? Why do you use the Vandal? Why don't you use the Phantom? It's like this game is pretty well balanced right now in a lot of ways that you know, the only agents that I really see like not being agents that you could really pick consistently would be Sage and Viper right now on, majority of the maps, but that like every other character is for the most part pretty balanced. Like I can see teams that could forego any agent in favor of another agent. I think that's pretty good. And I think that, in terms of gunplay, a lot of the guns are. This is what Valve wanted to do with Counter-Strike in a lot of ways. Like they just said, "Oh, shotguns are underused. Let's increase the kill bounty for it." Or SMGs are underused. Let's increase the kill bounty for it. Oh, this gun is underused. Let's buff the crap out of it. It's like these guns have reasons that you would want to use it. So the Ares has high damage penetration, so you can do a lot of like where you have maps or positions on maps where there's good wall penetration or wall spams. It's a viable weapon, over a Spectre. The Spectre is really viable. It has good damage, and then it has damage fall off for the low recoil or whatever. And then you see all these other guns are really well balanced, where it's like you're never really thinking to yourself, I'm completely screwed. Even if I have a classic, I could one burst a guy's head. You can't do that with a Glock in CS. You have to get like 3 headshots with that. So I think a lot of the situations in Valorant, it's like there is no right or wrong. It's just like what combination of things you could do right now that is most efficient or optimal. I don't think any character is like underutilized or underpowered, well, except for Sage and Viper. I don't know why they just nerfed the crap out of Sage. Like I think she was in a pretty good spot. Nerf one of the 3 things, not all of them, and she'd be an agent that you could use, like for example, as a duelist. And now it's just like, okay, like the self heal, just why? Okay, you're not going to use her anymore. And yeah, so I think that's a lot to unpack. Sorry.
No, honestly, I think for those that have been regulars on the show, this show for a long time, I walked into the beginning of this game just screaming, fuck tier lists, because it just doesn't make sense, generally speaking, because most people's tier lists are they're making a judgment on the meta effectively, where the meta is now. But the thing is that as you said, generally speaking, everything, if the game is balanced correctly in Riot's vision, then there's going to be opportunity cost for everything. So unless there is something that is like, let's say Jett, for example, you could actually make some arguments with Jett, that every ability that Jett has is actually so extremely good that you kind of always have to pick her in certain scenarios. Even then, with Jett, where Jett has been, you don't have to run Jett, and you can run very effective rounds on defense and attack by just tailoring things to the playstyle of your team and the agents you want to use and how they synergize and play off of the meta too and the maps. So there's all these other considerations that I feel like don't go into tier lists. And like, what does the tier list mean when all of the agents are supposed to synergize with one another? It's like it's so that to me makes it very kind of useless exercise ultimately, or at least let's say a very lazy analysis. Personally, so I have strong feelings about that. So I'm kind of with you on some of the points that you made. Um, but it is a really interesting dynamic to the game, because I feel like the amount of work ethic or the type of work ethic you need as a player in this game is very different to CS, where in this game, you're just DMing constantly and staying on top of your mechanics and fundamentals is not going to get you as far as doing the theory work and understanding how to react in a game that's ever evolving. So I'm hoping that Dicey and Asuna are going to be like good in those regards for you guys, because I know that Nitro and Hiko are going to be already in that mind state. So right. Given that we just started talking about balance, I feel like this is a good time to jump into the patch. Where should we start, Mike, in terms of the patch? This is a pretty huge patch. So
I think we should probably save the op for last. I would say that would be the best discussion. Maybe we start with Jett off the top. So I think the biggest thing with Jett everyone was complaining about before was the ult, and now it's slightly changed. I haven't been playing as much this week, so I haven't been able to experience it personally. But the one thing I still think with Jett as an opera on a lot of teams, and still may you have some insight to this, is I think people use Jett opping as like an opening into rounds a lot, and they kind of rely on that, especially in our region compared to others, where they don't really focus on like the Asian regions are pretty good at like finding these openings and having like set pieces into that. Whereas we're just kind of relying sometimes on, okay, we have our Jett, they're on an op this round, even if we're not on the best buy, they're going to find us a way into this round somehow.
Yeah, I think for Jett specifically, I think on like defense, Jett op is super good because you can do a lot of things and not get punished for it the same way that you would get punished if you were opping in CS. So she's got 3 like self smokes. She has updraft for verticality, and she has dash, where if she gets flash, she gets rush, she misses a shot, whatever, boom, you dash, you're into safety again. And I think that's what makes her on the op so good to compare to like any other agent on the op. I think like Reyna on the op, for example, could be good because you take a shot, you get the kill, you can dismiss away from the second guy that's coming to trade your ass. Um, Same thing with Raze. I think you could use your satchel for verticality. You could use your satchel to get out of bad positions. You could take a shot and then throw your boombot or grenades out, and it like makes people think twice about pushing into you, and then you satchel jump away. I think right now, Jett op on defense, just her dash is what makes her so good. And then I think on attack, I think we're gonna see, because of these nerfs to the gun, because we see like it costs more, it takes a longer time to pull out after throwing an ability. You have to wait longer before you're accurate with the gun. I think Jett op on attack is going to be something that we see less of. I think the op's going to go on maybe another agent, or maybe the op's going to be used less in general on attack now because of these changes. And maybe we see that the op is put on a different agent instead. Um, Maybe it's put on one of the last players going in. Maybe it's put on like the breach, and the op, instead of being used for an aggressive opening pick on attack, it's used to kind of just pin on an angle and not let rotations happen, or not let them re-peek into you and take that fight, or peek for information. So maybe it's better to use it on a character that's going to be sitting back, like a Sova or a breach or an Omen or um, Killjoy or Cypher, stuff like this. I don't know how it's going to go. I think it's still up to people to experiment with that and see what agents are going to fit their pool properly. But I see, for example, like, why don't people use like the judge more on attack on Jett? And you can always just make sure that you're close quarter by doing these smokes and doing the dash into them. And you could, close the distance many ways on attack by using these smokes, using the dash, getting in their faces with a judge, blasting their heads off, then grabbing their guns, and then just being like, okay, now I got a rifle, ho ho ho,
Yeah, the judge seems really, really good still, even though it's received some changes. Still seems super strong. Um, I was actually not sure about how the I don't think I've used the Bucky in a long time, but
It's
the
good.
judge is definitely still legit.
I use the
Still good.
Bucky on Killjoy because Alarm Bot makes double damage, and you could jumping
Ooh.
right click and just massacre people. It's
Oh,
fun. Yeah.
it does sound like
But
fun.
Cypher's better.
Right. So okay, so we have some of these Jett changes coming through. A lot of people wanted to see some of the adjustments to the ult, and that's something we got in terms of the damage fall off on
Yeah.
the right click, and there's a headshot multiplier on the right click, the burst fire that's been reduced from 3 to 2 times. So it should mean that it's less likely that you get headshot with it, and then equally, it's the cooldown has been increased. I haven't used it in its current iteration, so I'm not sure if 0.33 to 0.05 feels significant enough. Have you got experience with this? What do you feel about? How do you feel about this?
Personally playing Jett, I've only played her like 2 or 3 times in ranked games, so I don't have a lot of reps with it, but I've seen other people use it. I remember seeing a clip, I forget who it was, but they were basically like flanking B Heaven on split and just go, and there's 4 people there, and they just right click, right click, right click, right click. And you can get like 3 right clicks in a second before, and now it's only 2. So in that regard, like, yeah, it's a little bit more balanced. You can't just like one shot in the body center mass 4 people in a second and a half. Like, what rifle can you do that with, Like, what gun in the game can you do that with? And so in that regard, yeah, it was super overpowered. And then with the damage fall off, I think that's really good. What it basically does is it says, okay, your left click, your 50 damage one shot, or like body shot, or 150 damage headshot, you need to be precise with it. You need to take your time and aim. You can't just like shoot one and the person's dead unless you hit them in the head. You need to take your time with it. And the right click, I saw people updrafting like out of bind a heaven, like dash updraft and right click a guy by like U-Haul And it's like, how are you gonna do this? This is like 20, 30 meters away, and you just do like one right click while you're floating in the air. And, you know, I have to like flick up at your head and hope that pray to the RNG gods that my bullet's gonna hit you, and you just do this. It's talentless. So I think that the changes to it where you have that damage fall off, how if you do that right click and you accident one of the knives in the head, it's not going to be like an insta-gib. I think that is a good change because it makes it more focused on your long range, you left click, your close range, you right click, and you're not going to get away and massacre an entire team within a second and a half because you're just spamming right click at people's legs, you know, while you're full speed running or floating through the air. You can't do that with any other character with any other weapon. So I think, and to only farm it in 6 orbs or whatever, I think that's just like way too easy.
Yeah, I'm hoping that we'll see with Jett, let's say weaken slightly, that we'll see more more of a careful selection of Jett as opposed to, well, of course I'm just going to pick Jett, get an operator and dash around, but more integration into strategies or set pieces that may occur, like you were mentioning with the dash and the judge and so on. Something we have a clip of later, which is from a VOD review that we did on Wednesday, a Division Strikers and Jupiter match. I'm not sure if you saw it, but we saw a really awesome. I can just like describe it very briefly for you. We'll see it on screen later, but it's just a very cool and creative strategy on bind on defense. On A short, you had the Jett just dash immediately when the barrier went down towards the left side, towards the showers side of short, and had a breach flash immediately going through the first corner. So she's covered by the breach flash, and then another breach flash on the next corner. So then Jett's already basically killing people at showers. And stuff like that was like really creative. We'll see it later, but that's the kind of stuff that I haven't really been seeing people experimenting with that much in pro play. It's the first time I saw something like that, and it's something where it's like, well, I can understand that because if you see the value of Jett in other areas because she's really strong in it elsewhere, people don't have to be as creative. So it's I'm hoping that we'll see a lot of really cool stuff in that regard with those faster timings that she makes possible with the dash. Um, but with that said, um, here on Immortal Minds for a long time, since I think the very first show we ever did, we were kind of bigging up Viper, and Viper's still not really too much of uh, an agent that really sees all that much use. I think we have seen the best usage of Viper from We Did and from Safe, but it's just really few and far between at the top level in terms of compositions. Do you feel like some of these Viper changes are going to be helpful? And just to highlight these changes for people, she now starts with maximum fuel. Her snake bite debuff persists for 2 seconds after exiting the AoE. And then also you move a bit faster and your gun comes out a bit quicker when you pop that ultimate. So those are the changes.
Yeah, I think that the changes are in a good direction for her, but I still think that she doesn't really offer. I think the biggest pitfall that you have with her is that the nomenclature of all of the agents in this game is just scuffed. Like, I think they need to reword it or redo it or just remove the nomenclature altogether. For example, like, um, Sage is listed as a Sentinel, but so is Killjoy and Cypher. And in the Sentinel, it says they're like flank watchers and stuff like that. It's like, really? Like, I would consider Sage more of a duelist than a flank watcher, if anything. Like, she can heal herself or other people. She can slow down the enemy so that they can't push into you or that they can't escape when you want to go attack somewhere. She's really good on like yeah, her ultimate relies on, being behind a teammate and resurrecting them when they die, but like you can make that argument for any character. So for Viper, having the nomenclature of controller, it makes it sound like she can be used to I don't know, just like split the map and stuff like which she does, but she also needs to stay alive. Whereas like Omen or Brim, like once you place your smokes, you're expendable at that point. Like Brim especially, once you pop your 3 smokes, all you have left is your molly and then maybe your ulti. Your molly you can use on an execute or something like that, but your life is expendable. And if you die right after popping those smokes, your smokes are up the full duration. Let's say I want to go and attack a place as a Viper, and then I get pushed or I get like accidental raise naded or grenaded or something like her ultimate, like any accident, and that wall just comes right down, even if I just put them up like a second ago. And I think that's a big thing because now you have to be in the back. You have to be baiting. You can't take first contact. You can't lurk. And, whereas like Cypher or Killjoy or Sage or any of these other characters, it's like you can lurk. And if you do die, it's like you've already put up your trips, you've already put up your turret and your alarm bot, you've already put up your wall or slows, and these things are just gonna last the full duration, even if you die a second later. Whereas Viper, you need to be the last alive. And it's like, who would you rather have in a clutch? Like a Viper or like a Reyna, for example, or like a Viper or a Jett or a Viper or, go down the list. And I think that is, I guess, one of the things that's just holding back people from wanting to pick her. It's that I think you can't do, I mean, you probably could do just Viper and as your sole smoke character and drop Omen and drop Brimstone, but you're gonna run into these issues where you know the just think about all the times that your only smoker is a Brim or an Omen, and they get picked off early in the round. You're like, oh, we have no smokes, and they have an op. Think about how scary that round is now. Well, that's gonna happen with Viper too, and I don't think her smokes do as good of a job as like Omen or Brims. But then also she has to stay alive and bait, which means that you're sending in other people first. I mean, what are you gonna do? Like Viper op? Might be a thing. I
Yeah,
don't know. Spitballing.
I
I
think
like it.
I think as well, like one of the things before that kind of annoyed me with Viper was when you started with the 50 fuel or whatever it's called, you couldn't really do much fast because if you put that wall in your orb up right off the bat and you're doing like a fast exec, it's gone like 3 seconds when you're entering the site. So then you're just completely exposed. So I think this at least offers a new dynamic in that area.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's good. I think all the changes were in a good direction. I think the one thing that's preventing her from being picked is the fact that she needs to live. She needs to bait. And if you're baiting, that means everyone else is more expendable than Viper. And I just don't think you can make an argument for that over a lot of characters that have a lot more value. And her ultimate, like, it screws up the team. Your walls you need to be really super like specific with because your teammates need to know that if like the wall, like if you're putting the wall down so that you can take a fight on your part of the map, you need to know that taking the wall down might screw your teammates over. And that type of communication and coordination might like in the moment be too difficult to pull off, even with like the most like if you go over it and you go over the concept and you dry run it and you have this like theory down, like there's situations where with an omen smoke or a brim smoke, you know exactly how long it's gonna be there for. But for a Viper, it's like let's say you put up the wall, like put up the wall, I need to get out, and then you put up the wall, and then your Viper dies, and the wall just comes crashing down. You're out in the middle of the open with a knife out. It's like, oops.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, there's definitely a lot of pitfalls, unfortunately. I'm curious how it's going to like because people will be creative. Like it's kind of cool in the sense that because in Valorant it kind of feels like you can run into something you haven't seen before and have kind of lose a few enough of the key rounds because of not understanding how to adapt just yet that you may even lose that map. I feel like that's a thing in Valorant. Does that is that something that you're thinking of ever when you're playing this game? Do you feel like there is a bigger surprise element value because there's less rounds overall and there's more variance that there can be with compositions? And let's say you could work on something in secret and is that something that you're thinking about at all, or are you just thinking at this point just fundamentals is all that's important?
So before I like actually started doing Valorant full time, that is one of the things I was thinking about is that the game will be you have a lot of plays predetermined and you even have like different agent pools per game. So if you're starting attack, you might do one lineup, and if you're on defense, you might do another lineup. If it's map 1 versus map 2 and you won first map, you might do a certain agent lineup. But I think that requires a lot of prep, a lot of time together as a team. But I think like eventually you'll kind of have those NFL playbook things where you just have like so many different set plays that everyone's gonna have to like memorize. I think for the moment, like the best thing you could do is have a lot of plays and do like strat roulette almost, just because there are so many variables and there's so many new teams and there's so many things that people are learning all at the same time that you can't really take the time to counter strat every team doing all these different set plays on all these different agents. And I think that's something that could be viable in the now. But for us right now, I think it's like one step at a time, and that those types of concepts and ideas are so far down the line that it's not even worth it to think about right now. Because right now we're still figuring out like what the first composition we want to run for just these 4 maps are. And I think until we really figure out like what composition we want to use, like what our base or initial or favorite composition is, how are we going to think about secondary or tertiary composition lineups? You know, it's just one step at a time, and that's way too far out to kind of comment on right now.
Yeah, that's fair enough. Honestly, it's a pretty ambitious question, given that you just announced the full roster
Yeah.
yesterday. So I respect that. um, so we have also like the Reina buff. Effectively, I feel like, although it's technically her numbers went down, she her ultimate, her Empress rate of fire increase was decreased from 25 to 15%. It's something that feels like it is kind of a buff because it allows you to control the sprays more consistently, more easily. So, how do you feel about this?
I never used Reyna pre nerf, buff, whatever. So I wouldn't be able to really comment on it because I've only used Reyna like maybe a handful of times personally in ranked games, and um so it's hard to comment on that. But I think that if people find it to be easier to control her recoil, then I guess it is a buff in that regard because you still do have that rate of fire bonus, but now it's easier to control. I think Reyna as a character is definitely underestimated or undervalued. I see on people's tier lists, again, back to tier lists, I think that's why I haven't done one. It's like, how do you create a tier list and be like, okay, what's S tier? What does that mean? That an agent can be picked on every map and they're going to be good on every map? Well, Silva might not be great on split, but he's literally the best pick on every other map. So is he S tier or is he not S tier? And it's just hard to like kind of go down a list because of that.
Because
Anyways,
you're smart, Josh. Because you're doing
yeah, I guess so.
real analysis.
So I never really understood what like how to make a tier list because like this person's S tier and that person's S tier might have different definitions. Like, okay, well, so what's the point? So when it comes to Reina, I think that she does have a place. You just have to play her in specific maps or in specific positions or in specific ways to have her really be viable. I don't think you can just play her as like, oh, she's a duelist, so she's gonna be the first one in, and that's our Reina. I think you have to play her in specific ways, and I think she definitely has a place, and she could be really lethal in the right hands. And this is what I said before about like pretty much every agent is viable. You could pick like you could do Reina instead of someone else, and you can make it work. You just have to play your style, at least on that map, to fit the composition that you have. You can't just pick 5 agents because they're S and A tier and be like, well, they're on the S and A tier on my list, so it's gonna work. Nah, it doesn't work like that.
Yeah, speak, brother. Speak. Speak the truth. Okay, Mike. What do we have next here? Because I feel like we are bashing Hiko's content because he does like to throw the tier list out there. He was in the chat talking about that. So on the next change, I think
Put Killjoy on that D tier.
I was gonna say as well, like the one thing with Reyna's change though is I know before a lot of people when they were using her ult, they would buy like Spectre or Stinger specifically for it, so that might change that a bit because I thought that was kind of because everyone's thinking of like, oh, if the Vandal, it's super hard to control, but it's like Josh said earlier, people aren't really thinking about what other guns I can be using with this ult that would be like really viable other than rifles.
Get Brimstone, get an Odin.
yeah, that is something that it did feel like it feels like people didn't really understand how to use the stim with Brim, and he has had that 10% to 15%, so it comes in line with Reyna's percentage on the rate of fire increase from her ability. So I do like that there's consistency there. I think that's actually kind of nice. It's kind of annoying to like have to figure out how should I understand how to spray control between these different. It just feels a little bit unintuitive. So I like that they've done that. And Mikey, I know that you are someone that I feel like you came up with a lot of really awesome stim beacon setups when people weren't thinking about it, and I'm hoping that people will use the stim beacon more now. I know that the stim beacon on pistols with the frenzy was a favorite as well. Just get 5 frenzies, get the stim out there.
Yeah, I'm starting to get back in a position though where I just feel like the stim as a third ability for him just isn't that great, especially like when you're picking between him and Omen. But I just don't know what way they could rework it. People suggested wall penetration, but I don't really think that's the best route about going it. I just don't really know what you can change with it at this point.
I thought the Sim Beacon was really good counter to Sage walls. You throw it down, you bust down that wall
Yeah.
really super fast. Or like the doors on Haven, Garage. You could just blast through those really quickly at the start of the game or whatever to deny people from playing in there. And
Then they nerf
but beyond
Sage
that,
into
it's
the
like,
ground.
yeah, Sage got nerfed. She's not picked, so it's like, okay, well, what do I use the Brim Stim Pack for? I see people using it as like a fake flash. I'm like, bro, there's like 4 flashes in this game, and you don't turn from any of them. Like,
That's amazing. Yeah, it is an interesting one. So this is something that I think I brought up with Shazam. I think it's generally always going to be a relevant question, especially if you're a pro and your career is tied to what decisions the developers will make on a day-to-day basis about balancing. And in CS, the meta can stagnate quite easily. It's very slow to change. It's very cumbersome to change it and complicated. And in this game, you can just pick a different agent, or pick a few different agents, create a different composition to deal with whatever the meta is. It's a lot more agile in terms of pushing the meta forwards. But you also have a very active developer team that, let's say, might just forcibly change something. So, for example, say we think Sage is being used too much, we're just going to nerf her, as opposed to letting the pros figure out, okay, what are actually the most effective counters. Is this something that you think about much? Do you care about it? Do you have any opinions on this? Like forced meta changes from the developers as opposed to meta changes spurred by the players and their tactical prowess.
I don't have enough experience with it to comment one way or another. I think a lot of the meta shifts in Counter-Strike came from people not realizing the power of something, even though it existed for a long time. Because again, what I said earlier, everyone's so stuck in their ways in Counter-Strike. You learn the game one way, and then it's like, dude, have you used the CZ? It's insane. Have you used the UMP? It's insane. Have you used the Krieg? It's insane. And at first, people are met like UMP, why use that gun? Use this gun instead. CZ, why use that? Use the Deagle, use the 5.7, use this, use that. The Krieg, no, that's a noob COD gun. It's the same thing people say about like auto snipers. It's like no one used the auto sniper, and the auto sniper was so incredibly insane. It actually used to be used a lot in like 2014 because on maps like Train, where you could see under the trains and shoot people's feet, it was incredible. So I think that in Valorant, like first of all, it I don't have the experience in games where the developer like forces those meta shifts on you. So I can't comment on that because not enough experience, but I've seen arguments both ways of that, the, having the meta force on you is eh. Other people saying like it's good that the more meta's always changing, it forces people to always adapt, and the people that can't adapt, they just fall off, and that's good for, finding out who the best players are. I hope I can keep up with the meta shifts, but other than that, I don't really have anything much to say about that.
Fair. Yeah. With that said, the last and major, I guess, change was the operator change, something that people have been requesting for a very long time. On this show, we were generally just of the opinion that because we're only really concerned with professional level play, we're not really thinking about balance changes for ranked or anything else other than that. And so we felt like just adding a scope sound would be really the only change we were thinking about. And they did a lot of stuff. Like it's more expensive, 100 credits to 5,000 credits, so more than half your max money. They decreased the scoped movement from 76% to 72%. They adjusted the weapon dead zone from becoming inaccurate at 30% movement speed to 15% movement speed, which means that you become inaccurate sooner and you become accurate later. And there is a firing rate reduction from 0.75 to 0.6, which actually feels like quite a lot. An instant equip time adjusted from 0.3 to 0.5. So if you're trying to, let's say, tap an orb or tap a defuse or something, or throw an ability out, the operator comes out slower, making those plays worse. And the leg shot damage was decreased slightly as well. So that's a
So
lot
that
of
you can't
stuff.
one-shot someone that has light armor. Yeah.
Yeah, it's 120 instead of 127. Yeah.
Yep. I think some of the changes are good. I think all the changes all at the same time was like what they did to Sage. It's like you could probably adjust the price, or make the recovery time after landing, or make one of the other changes, and it would probably be like perfect. But I feel like they did too much. It's like, 5 grand. That's all the money that you have in overtime, for example. So you're gonna get op, no armor, no abilities. It's like, so you're not gonna have op in overtime most likely, unless you're doing it on like a Sova that's got his arrow for free. Killjoy's got a turret. Cypher's got a camera. Omen's got his free smokes. You're just gonna go without anything else, and that's kind of sketch. I mean, Jett still has her dash. So I think some of the changes, all of the changes individually would be good, but all of them happening all at the same time might be a bit much. And I think, yeah, a scope sound could have been like another change they could have done that could have helped balance it. But I think right now it got hit pretty hard, and we're gonna see only like a defensive style opping, or like getting someone inserted on attack just to hold the line. You're not gonna see as much in your face opping anymore, definitely.
Yeah,
Yeah. Go ahead, Mike.
I was just gonna say, like, when I look at the list, the other stuff I feel like would kind of be necessary, but like over time, as you said, not all at once. But the thing that keeps pressing me is the price change overall. Like, that's the first thing that I think of. That's gonna be the most drastic change, because it, like, the first round, basically pistol round, that changes. If you're gonna be trying to buy the op third round, you have to drastically like change, okay, what am I buying first and second round? You can't just do like the, what was it before, 4900. That won't even get you an op anymore. If you're just gonna buy like half armor and op, now you're looking at 5400. And I thought before I was in a good spot, because like, okay, this is half of your balance, like your total balance money. But now even if you have 9k, your max money, and you're just dominating people, if you invest in the op, you're down to 4,000 before you buy anything else. I just feel like that change overall with the price might be a little bit too aggressive right now, but
Yeah, because the op was literally half the max credits you could bankroll, and now it's more than that. I think that's like that's more than the CS op. In the CS, you can get $7,000
16k,
more in before you cap.
Yeah, it's pretty extreme. I'm really curious how this is gonna. I mean, one of the crazy things about this is it is just so opposite to CS, because CS, changes, like balance changes are so few and far between. But as you say, like this really is a case of lots of adaptation all the time, and you don't even have time to be outraged by what's changing. You just have to accept it and deal with it quickly. And so I'm really curious what that's going to, as an experiment, what's going to happen with that. And hopefully, Riot look at it like that as an experiment, and they kind of figure like some kind of balance between, as you said, adding 2 maps a year and 6 agents and constant balance changes. Like, where is the sweet spot in terms of how much they're impacting the pro play on a week to week, month to month basis. But with that said, I wanted to understand actually, Josh. Moving slightly away from the patch discussion as we've gone through all the major notes. Have you been looking at multiple regions, or have you mostly just been focused on what's going on in terms of the meta in North America?
I haven't been watching tournaments too much lately because of the practice schedule and my stream schedule, I do watch like YouTube videos of other coaches or just people that analyze Valorant just to see like what other teams are doing. There was one guy, I forget what his name. It might have been like Spline or I don't remember. He broke down like an FPX play style and what they do with gathering orbs and stuff with Angel. And I've seen kind of people talking about like, oh, how do you like liquid smoke listing and how do you like G2 without this or that? And um, I'll see videos with like clipping stuff about, you know, what they do really well or how they approach it. But beyond that, I haven't watched like actual tournaments on it. And then for North America, I feel like I get a better handle of how teams play based off of the scrims that I play against them, as opposed to watching the tournaments, because I feel like a lot of the time in tournaments, you don't even get to see like how they're setting up at the start, and you're just kind of at the mercy of the observer. Whereas, and then you're also like watching it as opposed to feeling it. I feel like every time you play, you're actually feeling what it feels like to get pushed at this spot by this aggressive push. Whereas like if you're watching aggressive push in a stream, it's like, okay, that looks like it could be easy to deal with or hard to deal with, but you don't really know how hard it is until you're like, you know, Raze is satcheling at you and Sova's blasting you with his ulti through the wall and you're getting pinged by Sova arrow just before this. And, you know, to be in the situation and to watch the situation is two very different things. So I've put a lot of more emphasis on watching my own practice VODs back. Um, just for my own sake, as opposed to watching more tournament games of other teams playing.
Gotcha. Well, so I
Spin, yeah, sorry, spin
might as well just throw it in there quickly then, because I think, do we have that clip
or
from Vision
sideshow. I don't know.
Strikers, Mike?
Yep.
Okay, so do you have the stream open, Josh?
Yes, I do.
Okay, so we'll have a clip coming up right now then, which is what I mentioned earlier. So saw this, and you know, we did it on our VOD review, and a few people have looked at this too. It's Vision Strikers Korean team versus Jupiter, who's a Japanese team, and it's just I thought really fun clip, and it's just interesting because I haven't seen anything like this in the North American or European region, in terms of using
Yeah.
Jett in this manner, using the breach flashes in this manner, and this is a great spot because also some additional context. This is the third round, and this is the
Mm-hmm.
team that won the pistol, so they're playing against their first gun round, and they all have specters, so they're obviously
Yeah.
encouraged to do something aggressive. So I felt like this was a really cool little play, and it's really interesting to see how different things are in the regions. And so I wanted to get your thoughts on, and this is very just very, you know, you got to take a guess, I guess, with this, but based on what you have seen with the different regions, G2, Liquid, FPX, and you know all of the teams in North America and whatever you've seen in the Asian regions, who do you think is playing more or closer to optimally right now, or does the game just is the game just not work like that? And it's all about style, it's just matchups.
Uh, the best team we've scrimmed so far in terms of, you know, how hard it was to play against and how well they were doing things was Envy. Um, when it comes to plays like the clip that we just watched, it's a good play, but that's something that you can pull out like once a game
Mhm.
to catch people off, or if you know that they're doing something really specific. It looked like that team wanted to do like a two-man shower control, grab the orb. One person was going to kind of like watch their back, and two people were going to maybe like work hookah or something like that. And I think like if you know that the people you're playing against is going to do that, you can get out and sandwich those people outside showers. And there's different ways you can do it, and they chose to do it this way, really aggressive in your face with the Jett and using the abilities that way. I think there's probably like 5 different ways they could have done different crunches on that shower person, um, and they chose that one that will win them around. And I think that's what I was talking about before, where you can almost do like a have just a bunch of set plays and kind of just like pull them out whenever. Because if you're trying to do on attack a default and get that shower control, and you're not expecting this type of stuff, this type of aggression, and you're going at one pace because you don't think it's going to come, you're going to get your ass handed to you. So you need to be able to read what your opponents are going to do, and you need to have these kind of like ways to deal with these things. And I feel like right now teams don't have those answers, and teams are really like rigid in their approach. And I think pulling out plays like this is really going to catch people off. I don't think like if they tried doing the same play like every round this half, obviously like the other team's going to be like, I'm just going to wait here and wait for this Jett and blast him. But um, those plays are definitely good. And to if they have one for showers for short, for outside hookah for long B, and then they have like a bunch of passive plays and a bunch of different like styles or shows for it, then right there it's like you can basically script your whole half if you want to do it that way. I don't personally think scripting like a half is good, but you could theoretically do it in this game, and I think it could work for a decent period of time.
Yeah, I'm curious with that because we did notice that they had a lot of amazing set pieces, great coordinations, but they fell apart in terms of some of the mid rounding, some of the more kind of dynamic situations. Some of the post plant protocols were missing, and so some of those fundamentals weren't there. But they did have a lot of the nice set play. In terms, so you said envy, so it's really interesting because uh, so when we had Shazam on last week, he was saying how Envy is basically a miniature version of Sentinels, and that they kind of just copy everything Sentinels do. Um, but what's your experience with Sentinels like? And because the perception is that they are the best team in North America. I feel like that's a reputation that they've earned with their play. What is your view of how they play the game?
We haven't played against them in a
Okay.
scrim yet, so I don't know, and I don't know if they've changed stuff since the last patch. For example, I'd imagine Sick is off of Sage now, and so so I think that changes how they're going to approach. The ops changed, and these other characters have been patched. I don't know if they've changed their compositions or had to change their play styles because of the agent nerfs or because they've changed their compositions. So I can't really talk about that because we've just never played them yet.
Gotcha. Well, quickly to everybody in the chat, thank you for the 500 viewers. That's awesome. We will be moving to our Ask Us Anything soon, so prepare questions for Josh should you have them and want to ask them. But we'll go through a couple of extra things first. And one of those things that I wanted to know, I don't know if you have anything that any burning questions, Mike, as well. But in terms of the transition from CS to Valorant and are there things that you feel like are hurting you that things that you habituated from the many years of playing CS, and now you're coming over to Valorant, or do you think that there's more as like a net positive ultimately?
There's a few things that I'm kind of like still wired for CS. For example, like a Reina flash comes out, I turn from it instead of shooting it, you know? And in CS, you turn from flashes. So things like that, those little things, I think it will take a while to rewire. But I think for the most part, just because I've played so many different styles of games, I've played StarCraft 2, Warcraft 3, I've played Dota 2, I've played Overwatch and PUBG and a few hours of Rainbow Six Siege. Like because I've played a variety of games, I feel like I'm more equipped to kind of like come into Valorant and know that it's not CS and that you can kind of transfer a lot of the same concepts that you learn and a lot of the same fundamentals that you learn, but you have to realize it's a new game and you can't play it exactly the same way. But um, what was the first part of the question again?
Yeah, whether it's you feel like it's a net positive overall having all of the experience from CS, or if there's too many sort of things that are habituated that are like just kind of you feel like are slowing you down a little bit.
I think it's still a net positive. A lot of the things are still constant. For example, like rotations, when to rotate versus when to stay in your area and hold your stuff and trust that your teammates are going to hold. Because like in Counter-Strike, it takes a while to learn how to identify a fake and if it's a fake or not. Or, maybe there's low time on the clock and then, the enemy show at one site, you're like, oh, there's only 20 seconds left. They got to be hitting. And then you start rotating. I think I'm at a point in Counter-Strike where I would be like, okay, you guys are going to hold your stuff. And if you don't, then we have to play the retake. But if I leave now, you know, you're going to be dead and I'm going to have to wait for my other teammates to rotate anyways before I can approach this retake situation. So why even leave? And then if it is a fake, I'm already in position. So stuff like this is good. And then you have to also consider the map, whatever's on the map. So a map like Bind, there's teleporters. you have to respect the fact that there's teleporters on the map, which is something that doesn't exist in Counter-Strike. So I think some players would be like, "Oh, well, yeah, they're gonna do this they're gonna do this play, and they're committed," but then they don't realize like, "Oh, the Omen's got his ulti ready, so he can like tap the bomb in A and then TP over to B. You can't over rotate." Or they can hit the short TP and get back to hookah within 5 seconds. So if you over rotate, you've left the bomb site completely. I don't know. Like, I think for me, it's a net positive just because I've experienced so many different games that I don't feel like I was kind of pigeonholed into this tiny way of looking at the game and playing it. But I think it might affect other players. Um, but I think again, it comes back to adaptation, and it's either you can adapt or you can't, or you adapt fast enough, or you're not adapting fast enough. I think I can adapt fast enough to the changes, and I think that the people that can't adapt fast enough, it's unlucky, really. I think they'll get weeded. I think they'll get weeded out of Valorant sooner rather than later. Like in Counter Strike, the meta shifts were so like there would be a meta shift like once every like 9 months on average or something like that. I don't know what the actual answer is, but I think that the meta shifts were so slow in that game that you could get to like a really good level in one meta and you can kind of linger around for a really long time. That's why you saw people that would linger around for like 2 or 3 years, even though they've fallen off like a year or two before, just because the meta changed so slowly and then they fell off over a long period of time. I feel like in this game, people are going to fall off a lot quicker and it's going to be a lot more noticeable. And they won't be able to just like that meme like paycheck stealers in Counter-Strike. I feel like you're not going to be able to paycheck steal as much in this game.
Okay, so I have like playing off of your answer there. Who do you think will be the first top 8 team in North America to fall off dramatically?
Ooh. What would you consider the top 8 teams to be then?
So you got Sentinels, you got Envy, you got Cloud9, you got TSM, you've got
Dignitas.
Genji, Dig, Immortals. Are we in there? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
yeah, why not?
Envy, 7, 100 Thieves,
T1, I guess, but they
T1.
have a team now, so I guess they don't count.
To fall off. So like
Yeah,
to
who
fall out of
will?
the top 8, or just to like not
Yeah,
even be like the MIBR of just like NA Valorant where they just get beaten by tier 8 teams.
I don't know if anyone can fall off that far yet, but
Okay.
yeah, but like going because your point was sort of that you can be really good in a meta like in CS, but then there's a slow drop off. Who
Right.
do you? Because so right now we haven't really had I think enough time. So I'm asking you for a prediction as to what you've seen. Like, is it like TSM were the first best team in North America ultimately? Are they going to be the first to drop off, or will it be a different team? Some of the lineups have changed here and there, so it's maybe hard to say in that regard too. But
It's hard to
speak to
say
adaptation.
because I haven't played all of them. For example, we haven't played T1. We've haven't played Dignitas. We played Genji once when we were doing tryouts with different people. We played TSM a couple times. We played C9 once, and we haven't played Sentinel. So it's hard to gauge in that regard. I think I don't know. I feel like C9's gonna fall off. I don't know why. I don't know what it is. I just feel like they're gonna fall off.
This is really interesting because yeah, last week I asked Shazam, who does he think the top 4 best teams in North America are right now, and he felt
Mhm.
like C9 were number 2. So I think it's really interesting. We've had opposite viewpoints there. That's really interesting.
Well, unlucky. I don't know. Maybe because like we played them once and it felt really lackluster. It
Okay.
like because I saw them play tournaments and I saw the results in tournaments and it was like, okay, they look like they could be really promising. But then like it just felt really underwhelming. And I don't know if there was something, maybe it was just because it's the scrim. Maybe it's because it was something internal going on. Maybe they were trying new things. Maybe we were just playing really well. I don't know what it was. It just felt flat.
Fair enough. All right. Well, with that said, I guess it's time to move us on to the questions from chat. The Ask Us Anything segment to close things out. Have you spotted anything, Mike, that you like the look of to begin with?
Yeah, Immortals because we took their best players. They're gonna fall off hard too.
I actually have a question relating to that. So obviously you're a good eye for talent coming from CS, and there's been a few different ways people have approached picking up people in this game, whether you have like a specific style of player you're looking or whether you want them to fill a certain agent or style of agent. Did you guys have a certain criteria when you were picking these last two people? Like, oh, we want a person who plays like Jett or a person who plays just like this style.
Yeah, so for I guess the agent roles that we would be doing between myself, Hiko, and Nitro, we kind of had Sentinels, Controller, and Initiator filled out. Whatever. The nomenclature is so awful. Like, what does initiator mean, man? It's awful. Okay, anyways. So we were looking for, I guess, duelists mainly. And if we're looking for duelists, we'd look for like people that had high skill ceilings, aggression, really good mechanics. But then outside of like the in-game, like things that you could see by watching a player play, um, communication, maturity, um, how easy it is to talk to them, how well do they respond to feedback? Are they going to take that feedback and work on it right away, or is it going to take like a long period of time to work on something? Because this game is going to be moving so rapidly, and because there's like so much to learn, especially for a newer player that doesn't have a lot of experience coming from another game or no experience at all, especially if they're really young, it's super important for them to be able to kind of accelerate how fast they can learn and accumulate the knowledge and be able to implement it at the same time as learning it. And we felt that when we were playing with Dicey and Asuna, they kind of ticked all those check boxes. Like they weren't afraid, like in a, you know, two 17-year-olds playing with two 30-year-olds and a 24, 25 year. I don't remember how old Nitro is, to be honest. I think he's 24, maybe he's 25. I don't know.
Yeah, sounds
And
right.
um, and for them to come in and play with like us, like I know a lot of people their age kind of would be scared just because I've played with lots of people who came in and thought I'm like I'm the big bad wolf or whatever, and they weren't afraid to kind of like troll or banter back and to be able to do that and also like retain a sense of maturity and these things, it's really good for a player to kind of be able to be kind of free and not scared to speak their mind and share their opinion, because it is a team game and you're going to need to get along with each other and you're going to need to be able to um, it doesn't matter who it is. Everyone on the team needs to be able to be like, yo, man, I don't think that was a good peak. Here's why I don't think it was a good peak. And if people don't hold each other accountable in that regard, then you're going to, stagnate. You can't have people being afraid of talking to whoever because they're older, they're more experienced, or they have this attitude or whatever. Everyone needs to be able to be like, yo, man, you messed up and you need to know it. And I think that's like super undervalued in this game because I feel like, or not this game, but in esports, I feel like everyone's just so soft and you need to almost like walk on eggshells when you're giving feedback. Um, and I think that we have a good thing going on right now.
Awesome. So this is a quick one, and I like this because we got Shazam's thoughts last week about this too. SD for Quantum asks, what do you think about the Phantom compared to the Vandal now?
I used the Vandal even before the buff came in, so I still say the Vandal's better. I think that it's going to be for a few things, it's going to be kind of agent dependent. For example, if I'm playing a character like Cypher and I'm playing around my cages, my trips, or playing a certain way, I might want the Phantom because it doesn't have tracers. Or if I'm using someone like Omen or Brim that uses smokes, or I want to play in smokes, or Viper, then I might want to use the Phantom. But I think for the characters that I play and just the style of fighting I do, I think I prefer the Vandal just because you've got that flat damage, 40 damage any range, and 160 headshot at any range. And I think that is super useful and undervalued because like Phantom had with that damage fall off, it's a really big thing.
All right. I like it. All right. Well, Hitch asks, can you talk a bit about the strengths and weaknesses of your new pickups, Asuna and Dicey?
Yeah, their strengths is that they're built different, and their weaknesses is that I think their only weaknesses right now is that they're inexperienced, and that's just like a rep thing. That's when you get more, when you just play more, when you have those deeper tournament runs, you learn more from losing than you do from winning, I think. And when you don't have a lot of like reps in general, it's like even harder. So playing scrims and getting exposed in those scrims and then going back to like a doing a VOD review and talking about what happened and why it happened and how to fix it, that's like the best way at getting better. So that's just something that takes time, and that's time that they really haven't had. So if we're going to call it a weakness, then that would be the biggest weakness, but I don't think that's just part of the process, you know?
Yeah. It sounds very reasonable to me. Right. Nasanov123 asks, are Hundred Thieves considering to bring in a coach, and why is it going to be Ninja?
Yeah, man. Uh, he's already actually signed, and he's providing a lot of valuable. Uh, I can't even keep this up. I'm sorry. We have a coach. He's been with the team for a little while. Beyond saying his name is Frost, his alias. I don't know how to explain how else. Like I know him from Counter-Strike because he worked with other orgs, crossed his path before, he's crossed Tico's path before, but most people probably wouldn't know him from behind the scenes. Not Carrie Frost Cartinian, a different Frost, Frost with an S.
Gotcha. Right. Do you see any questions you like, Mike?
Yeah, let me scroll up and find this one quick. How important do you think bounce coin / individual smarts matters in Valorant? Do you think you could get by with one IGL that micromanages the team like in CS?
I think there's a lot of things to consider in this game compared to CS. Every agent's got individual abilities. If you lose one person, it's very hard to know like what do they have left. You don't know if like, yo, how long until you've got both your smokes. It's gonna be, if you're asking an Omen, it's gonna be a lot more difficult to kind of micro like an on the fly type of strat. So I think a lot of the things that you do are going to have to be kind of done in prep before you actually play a game, just so that you can call on like, okay, let's do hookah control number 1 or something, or let's do this, one of 3 B execs from hookah on bind. I think you'll kind of have to compartmentalize all of those different little things that you do, whether it be like a map control or an execute on a site. I think that if you are going to kind of micro every little thing, even if it's just as like a simple on the fly exec, I think even in Counter-Strike, you didn't really just have just the one IGL. You'd have someone step up and take over. Like what happens if the IGL is dead? What happens if the IGL is on the other part of the map? What if the IGL is like entrying? What if it's a retake and you're on CT side, and the IGL is dead? Someone else will have to step up and coordinate something. So it could be like, I've got this, in CS it would be I've got the smoke and flashes, yo, go here, I'm gonna smoke this and double flash you out, go on my second flash. And it's as simple as that anybody could do. It doesn't have to be the IGL. Um, in this game, it's gonna be a little bit different just because there are so many variables to keep track of. There's ulti economy that you have to keep track of. Like if the IGL says, let's do this play, and then I press tab and I'm like, wait, they've got breach alt and sub alt and they both play here. They might just breach alt us. I think it's hard to keep track of a lot of the different variables and things that go on that you just need to help just bring up info and just like remind them like, hey, okay, like the IGL says, let's do our B hit on bind, we have to say, okay, they've been playing double garden control with the third guy, backside, and it's like, oh, they play Phoenix and Sova garden and then raises backside. Um, Raze has her nade still. You know, just being able to share that information is important, but I don't think that's really like an IGL thing versus just a normal player thing. I think it's on everyone to kind of speak up and identify those things and help each other with the you know, with the situation, because you can have like an exec for B where you take this padding, but then you say like, hey, on our B exec, I know we normally go out and we go to the right here, but we should go out and we should go to the left because of this, and we should kill these guys here. I think that's on everyone to be able to stand up and just say like, yo, this is important information. I'm gonna say it. It doesn't matter if it's coming from a 17-year-old new pickup or a 30-year-old boomer. It's important regardless.
Right. So next question is from God, I lost it. Wait, hang on. Right. Jim Boy Fulton asks, still anything from CSGO you wish was incorporated into Valorant?
Putting out mollies, especially brim mollies.
That's
Oh, demos,
Yeah.
better no clip system, a way to change maps without having to all back out of the game and start a new lobby. Um, yeah, just anything with regards to practice tools. Basically, there are none in this game.
that is a very good point. It is fairly limited right now. I completely agree. Well, Burger Mick King asks, what is happening with FaZe? Are they any good with the information you heard about them and in the scrims that you have played against them?
We've played FaZe twice. I think the first time we played them, we had a different set of tryouts, and um, it just wasn't working out. There was like no spark, if you will. The second time we played them, we were playing with Dicey and Asuna, and um, FaZe was very underwhelming that time that we played them. So I don't know if it's because like we already knew how they played, or if they changed. They did change things up. They had a different composition the second time we played them. The first time they were really aggressive with like breach, and um, the second time they weren't running breach. I don't know if that's like a permanent thing, or if it was like they were just trying something, or if they were just um, I don't know what it is, and without like giving away like what they do, because I think that's not really respectful. Um, I don't know what it was, but the second time we played them, we're like, how did we struggle against them so badly the first time, so to speak?
Well, with that answer, I think we have time for another couple quick questions. Mike, do you have any that you spotted that you want to ask?
Let me scroll up here a bit. Unless either of you guys see one before I do.
So one that I liked is from the Island Spud. He asks, who do you think are the best free agents who are currently left on the market?
I don't know them well enough in terms of like, but beyond hearing about, for example, like we did, I've never really played with him. I've played like against him in ranked like a couple times maybe, but you know, I haven't actually played with him. I don't know what his personality is like, his communication, his teamwork, all these things. I just hear he's really skilled. So for me to answer that, first of all, I don't know the list of free agents, and secondly, if I did know the list of free agents, I most likely wouldn't have even played with them to really give anything more meaningful than some, you know, BS. Just like, oh yeah, they're really good. I think they're going to be in top 20 this year. You know, I don't know honestly.
Yeah, that's very fair and honest.
I got one now from Bamflian. Which type of agent do you think needs to be eventually added? And conversely, which type of agent do you never want to see and think it would break the game?
In terms of agents that I think would break the game, I'm thinking like you add like a Winston from Overwatch that has a shield or something like that. You just like whoosh, it's like a dome shield or something. I think and that you can shoot out of, but they can't shoot in. Holy. Um, but as far as like people to add, I feel like I kind of had this meme on my stream, and I don't know if Bam was there at the time. That I was like kind of spitballing all these ideas for new agents, and I was like combining different like Warcraft 3 heroes or neutral heroes or Dota characters. So I was thinking like, you get the Goblin Alchemist, where you have like the acid spray. It's kind of like Viper's Molly, but then you get him with like a healing, AoE healing thing, where you just like group up and you just like heal all the raised nade damage or whatever you took. You can just get a healing that way, or maybe you get like I forget what it's called. It's like the Tauren in Warcraft 3, the Tauren shaman
Chieftain.
guy. Not the hero, but the guys that like resurrect all the dead Tauren guys.
Oh yeah.
Like they've got that thing that link up everyone so they share the
Spirit Link.
damage or something. Spirit
Yeah.
link. And when you just share all the damage, like how would that work? Would that be interesting? Would that be awful in this game? I have no idea. So um, I don't know. It'd be interesting to see like what types of
That's
like
also
MOBA
dumb.
RTS guys. Yeah, I mean, you're gonna be adding 6 characters a year to this game. You're gonna have some pretty dumb shit at the end of this.
Yeah.
At the end of like 2 years, you're gonna have some stupid ass shit going on.
I totally agree, man. I've been wondering that too. I'm like, I mean, if they can somehow make it so that there isn't loads of just dumb stuff, I'm going to be so impressed because I don't see how you could not have loads of dumb stuff with that many new agents. Because it's like an FPS game. It's like you're walking this line with the fundamentals of like CS, and somehow they've already made it not dumb. Well, yeah, it's not. I feel like it's not dumb, but it could very easily get dumb. So yeah,
Like,
that's gonna be fun to see.
I don't know. Like, I'm not creative enough, I guess, because I would definitely run out of ideas, and I would definitely
Mhm.
create stuff that's really super stupid. So yeah.
Yeah, me too. Right. With that said, we have no more time for any questions. So thank you everybody who submitted their questions, and thank you everyone for tuning into the episode today. Josh, thanks so much for joining us. It's so awesome to have you, and I cannot wait to see you guys in action. It's going to be really fun.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me. And yeah, I guess we'll show you what we've got in whenever this first strike thing happens, I guess.
Yeah.
Sometime
Do
in
you,
this month,
Sometime
maybe.
whenever it gets announced.
do you have any things that you want to plug? Are you streaming this week? You got some content coming out. What should people be looking out for in terms of your productions?
Yeah, normally like Mondays to Friday, sometimes even Sunday, I'll stream like 9 a.m. Pacific for like maybe like 4 or 5 hours, maybe less. So you can find me there. Otherwise, you can follow me on Twitter to see me seldomly tweet things. Otherwise, yeah, follow me there and follow me on Twitch and follow my Instagram.
Follow him. All
Follow,
right.
follow, follow, follow.
What about you, Mike? You up to anything interesting?
Nope, just gonna keep waiting to see if this invisible agent's actually a thing in the next few weeks or not, but hopefully not.
Invisible agent.
They have
Oh
an
my goodness.
invisible agent. It's called Reyna ult after she gets a kill.
May this one will
True.
just be that, but every round.
Well,
Oh
I mean,
my-
they've already stolen like Reaper from Overwatch. Might as well get Moira or whatever the one that goes invisible is. Maybe it's
oh
not
God, no.
Moira. Maybe it's the other one that I don't know what. I forgot all the names to be honest.
That's like after I stopped playing.
The one that hacks you so you can't use your abilities.
Oh right,
Sombra. Sombra.
Sombra. Yeah. Well, oh God, let's not give them ideas. Let's not give them
Well,
ideas. Okay. Well, for those of you that missed this awesome episode, we do put everything onto YouTube a day after, so you can expect it tomorrow morning on the Immortal Minds YouTube channel. As with all of our other content, we'll be doing a VOD analysis, which we do every Wednesday on Wednesday at 10 a.m. Pacific. We have a new time for that. And also check out the Discord too. We have an awesome community that's ever growing, where people you can maybe mitigate some of the toxicity you'll typically run into on the Valorant matchmaking system by finding some like-minded individuals to play with. You can tag your rank as well as the agents that you play, and you can search for other people in your region to kind of match up with and make some friends. We also have a really cool match discussion channel which people are really active in when watching any pro matches together. So that's been really awesome. So jump in on that if that sounds good to you. And otherwise, I think that pretty much wraps it up for today's episode. Am I missing something? Oh, are we going to host someone? Who are we going to host? Okay. So it looks like we're going to be, if you want to stay on, we're going to be hosting Jason Lake. All right. Thank you everyone for watching. Oh, apparently I'm supposed to tell you guys I'm competing in about 30 minutes. So that's what I'm doing in Diabolical. That should be fun. I'll be streaming on twitch.tv/DDKTV. But that's everything. Cool. Thanks guys for watching. We'll catch you on the next one.